So I think we are live right now, and Paula, I think I can see you there, which is kind of curious that we have one person because I've got 35 signed up. 4 people signed up, fantastic. So we'll just make sure that a few people are arriving. Deborah's here. Hello, Deborah. Hello, Juan. Hello, Paula. Hello, Simon. You might notice on the side of the screen there's me, and then there's the bit that says commercial HR L&D business partnering. Yes, you are in the right place. There is an option over here to type, put things in. So if you feel at any stage like saying hello, just so I know you can hear me and see me, that'd be tremendously helpful. And oh, hello, Juan. Good, thanks you. I'm glad you can hear me. And my computer, there we go. That's fantastic. Just mastering the technology. Good. So I think we should probably start because I figure we have 34 people who have signed up to do this, and at the appointed hour we have 4, which is good. We've got the 4 people that really matter. That's the important thing. So let's get started. Time is always one of those things, isn't it? Now I've got my notes around me, and I've got my water here, and I've got some slides in front of me, and I've already mentioned to one side of the screen you can see there's the opportunity to type in some questions, make some comments, make some observations. I will be asking you for some comments a little bit later on. I will be asking you some questions a little bit later on. So as we start this webinar, a couple of things just to go through before we get started, because I know these are sometimes mildly shocking for people. The first is you can see me. I can't see you unless I press one of these buttons here, but I'm figuring it's 6 o'clock. It's been a long week already, and you may well be sat there in your PJs and a cup of cocoa. So yeah, you'll be fine. I won't be pressing any magic buttons so I can see you. But Juan, you wish. I know, life's like that sometimes. So you do have the opportunity to write those comments, to make those interactive statements. The picture of me is there partly because I come from a place where I think too many seminars and nowadays webinars are people somewhat dully speaking to their slides, and that's just not how I am. If you ever see me live, you'll know this is exactly how I am. But also, I'm kind of figuring I might be able to convey some of my ideas a little bit better than just a series of slides. You can, however, if you decide you want too much of me or too much of the slides, at the top of the screen there, you'll see a little button to move it one way or the other. I'm sure you'll be fine with all of that. I've mentioned the questions and comments. A couple of other things you need to know. This is recorded and it is automatically sent to you. So once you've seen this, hopefully enjoyed this, got something useful from this, you'll have a link to allow you to access it, to pass on to your colleagues if you feel that would be of use. One of the points I will add just finally is, you see there under the title it says @BlueBeetleTwits. That's my Twitter handle. I put that there because one of the questions that inevitably comes out of a webinar is, why do you do this? Not you, the person sat there participating in this webinar, but what me? Why am I sat here with the Blue Beetle thing behind me and put these slides together? What's the benefit to me? And there's often a suspicion, I'll share with you right now, that I might be about to launch some sneaky sales process on you. If that's your concern, it's not going to happen. I run this webinar for a number of reasons, and they are, of course, linked to marketing, and they're linked to us getting our name out there. They're linked to us demonstrating the kind of work we do. But part, I hope, of the deal might be that @BlueBeetleTwits, that's our Twitter handle. So if you have found something useful in this webinar, I would be really grateful perhaps if you choose to follow us or maybe post a comment or something or other. There's also scarab@bluebeetle.co.uk. That's the email address. So very often after webinars, or you might have found this after a training course, there's a question that you never asked, or there's something you didn't understand, or Occasionally, you just want to go, yeah, I really enjoyed that. Thank you. Please feel free to use that email address. It's there should you wish to do so. That's it, simple as. So let's crack on. Let's get into the content. So topics: the modern role of HR and L&D. Now, I've been doing this for about 20 years now. My name is Graham David. I'm from Blue Beetle, as you might have worked out by now. And when I first set up this business 20 years ago, I was really keen to differentiate what we did to what I perceived as other training companies. And in the last, or at least 10 years, I've worked with huge numbers of HR professionals. So although that is not my background in HR, I clearly within L&D work with HR people a lot. And there are a couple of things I've kind of noticed. I've started to pick up about both L&D and HR. And I've noticed that often L&D and HR is perceived as the pink and fluffy bit. Now, it's been said and noticed for years and years and years, in any kind of economic downturn, any change in force of the business, you're going to kill marketing and you're going to kill L&D because they don't really add anything to the business, right? And it's always frustrated me slightly that I know that some of the seminars we've run, the training programs we've run, and I'll give you 2 case studies later on, some of the inputs that we've given have made an absolute bottom line difference. But there's still this perception that L&D is something you can lose. And likewise, I think HR is sometimes perceived and positioned as, well, they're the people that are good with the emotional criers. You know, when you go, so-and-so disappears to the toilet all morning and they won't speak to anybody, we'll get HR in because they'll be able to deal with them. Or, of course, HR are quite good at coming in the tricky situations and having the conversations that none of the managers want to have. And this is fine, so long as this is as far as your ambition goes. But I would suspect, given that you decided to allocate some of your valuable time to this webinar, by the way, people always want to know about time. Webinar is scheduled to run for about 46 minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions afterwards. So all tightly within the hour. But you've scheduled some of your valuable time to be on this webinar. So my suspicion is you might want to be a little bit more than the cleaner-upper of other people's misfortunes, or the person that does the L&D program once a year to get everybody out to Milton Keynes for 3 hours. See, one of the constant refrains here from my colleagues in both L&D and HR is, how do we get a seat at the top table? How do we get the senior management team to take us seriously? What is it that we need to do in order to get to that stage? So rather than be reactive, rather than fight fires, how can we be the ones that get asked early on in the program, what is it that we need to do? How do we get involved in this? So this might lead, this is what we're going to be looking at this webinar, this might lead to all of us having to redefine our position within the organisation. It might lead to starting to justify our position within the organisation before we asked. It might lead to having to advertise a little bit about what it is we actually do. Because wouldn't it be great if somebody at senior level, rather than just getting the HR person in to check the legality of what they're going to do, or rather than just calling in the L&D specialist to do something vaguely interesting with the year-long seminar, wouldn't it be great if actually we sat down at the planning stage and said, what do we get out of this? How are we going to put this together? What is it that we're going to do? What do we need to change in order to achieve some of the things that we need to achieve? So this inevitably starts to lead and think about personal brand. And personal brand, even 10 years ago, might have been one of those things you might sneak into yourself. Personal brand, really? What do you mean personal brand? But I think the landscape has changed. And if we don't move with that, then we only have ourselves to blame. So what do I mean by personal brand? If we start to think about the importance of perception within your organisation and in your own standards of customer service and your responsiveness time to your clients and how well aligned you are to your business. So how do you react to things that change in your business, or how well do you help shape them? I have lost count of the number of times, and I'm clearly not going to label businesses here, but I've worked with HR people who don't really understand what the core business does. So I used to work with an HR person a couple of years ago, a very elegant individual, very smart, who liked nothing more than putting on their high-vis jacket and getting down and dirty with the workers. And their thinking for that was, if we don't truly understand what it is the business does, we run the risk of fencing ourselves into HR world. So all we talk about and all we're aware of is what the HR perception is. And that's great if that's all you want to do, but my guess is you might not. You might want to go a little bit beyond that. So how do we develop ourselves and our impact within the organization so that people know that we understand the business from our perspective, but we crucially understand the business? How well do we know what it is our customers actually want? Now, I have to tell you that over the last 20 years, I've mentioned the HR example, a lot of L&D people get, and I'll count myself in this camp, get so caught up in the learning development program and the fantastic new training system we're going to use, or we're going to take them all off to Snowdon and throw them into a lake because that's the new way of learning stuff. That's all fine, but how well does it support what the business needs? So how well is it that you have that definition of your personal brand? So if I start to think some questions around that, if you want to be in the planning stage, if you want to be the person that they speak to, whether HR, L&D or L&D, before they launch a major initiative, or if you want to be able to go to SMT and say, I need some funds for something I'm going to run, wouldn't this be a much more fulfilling place to be? Will this allow you to serve your organization better? Wouldn't it allow you to do more within the scope of your business? So there's often a question I ask when I run this seminar live, and I might ask this question now actually, just to make sure that you know where the typing button is, and the typing button is just on the side of the screen there. Whenever I ask a room full of 80 or 100 or 200 people who actually, when they were little, didn't say, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a ballerina, I want to drive trains. Who said, I want to work in HR, I want to be an L&D professional, I want to fill in feedback forms? The point is, and I'm really not being flippant, is that most of us have fallen into this sort of role one way or another. And that's okay, that's fine. But the organization we're in might allow us to start to put forward some of the outcomes and some of the drivers that we have to make some real and lasting and impactful change. So how do we move away from being just a cost center? Because everyone knows HR, everyone knows L&D, you're a cost center. Because when things change, and they always do, why do you need 6 people on your team? And you're then on the back foot. L&D person, do we really need to do a whole day? Do we need to go to Snowdon? Do we need to throw that many people into the lake? Because if we don't have a better through line on this, in L&D and HR, we're always going to be the people that everybody else kicks, metaphorically, when times are tough, when budgets are low, when needs of business have changed, and we're trying to justify our existence. So I have some homework for you. I know homework traditionally comes at the end of the session, but just as a preparation for the homework, and I have 2 questions for this homework, the 2 questions are this, and I want your early thoughts on this because I've been talking for a little bit and it might be an opportunity for you to do some typing. So these are my 2 questions. How are you perceived in your organization? I don't mean, are you grumpy on a Monday? I don't mean, are you known to have a bit of a drink on a Friday night? But I mean, in terms of what we've been talking about so far, what is the perception of you in your business? Are you the go-to person to solve stuff? Are you the person that makes problems go away? Are you the person that tries to make the CEO's yearly address sound a bit more entertaining? Or are you a bit more than that? And the first question is that, how are you perceived in your organisation? The second question is this, how do you want to be perceived? Now, for most people in HR and L&D, I've noticed there's quite a gap. There's a gap between when I joined, I had all of these ideas. When I first started working in this area, I had so many thoughts about what I could do to improve it. When I joined this organisation, I could see so much wrong and so much I wanted to do. That's where I was. That's what I wanted to be. But actually, I'm kind of here. So what's that gap? So I'm curious if you would like right now to maybe type a question, a comment, or observation based on your personal brand or anything we've been speaking about. That'll be great. So I'm just going to give you a moment, just while I sip my water, just to type any quick thoughts, question, comment, observation you may have. This being an interactive process, and we'll see what you think. Let's be honest, who said webinar should be quiet with one person talking? So HR as a support function, protection from legal matters, people problem solvers, and occasionally blockers. So thank you, Deborah. I'll just read that again. I don't know if you can all see the answers come up. I think you probably can. Deborah, I think, can I just check you saying that's what it is or what you are perceived as? You're saying, Deborah, HR as a support function, protection from legal matters, people problem solvers, yeah, wave a magic wand and they're gone, and occasionally blockers, what it is and what is expected. Yeah, now I'd agree with that. What I might also suggest, what we want to say much more, yes, oh, Deborah, thank you for saying that. So I got quite excited there. Yes, that is what it is, I think, in a lot of organisations, and I think that is what is expected in a lot of occasions, but it could be so much more. Oh my goodness, yes, thank you, Deborah. I'm quite excited there. I might be wiping a tear away. If anybody else has a comment, a question, observation, that'll be tremendous to see right now. Juan, I manage a small L&D team in a large organisation and consequently a jack of all trades. Yeah, because the thing is, when you're an L&D, Juan, I recognise that so much. You know, I work with a lot of people and they go, well, we're trying to sign on 100 new delegates. We're trying to run the, consequently, yep, I got that. Consequently, a jack of all trades. Absolutely get that. I'm trying to sign on 100 delegates. I'm trying to get the CRM model running. I'm somehow having to help out HR. I've got to book the venue, sort out, absolutely. And the problem, and I think you've put that so well there, the problem, of course, is that doesn't allow you to bring your team to the point that we ought to be, and it doesn't allow us to demonstrate where we want to go. Deborah, also the expectations are unrealistic. Yep, so often true, compared to the amount of resource we're allowed to have. And this goes back to my point, Deborah, that at the moment, many people in L&D and HR are presenting themselves as a cost centre. And if we want to change this, if we want to have more opportunity, if we want to have less of expectation of being a jack of all trades, and there's your budget, make it work, that's always going to be the case. So what I'm going to show you in this webinar is we need to fundamentally change that. We need to change our personal brand. So my question, my homework is important. What is it that where is it that you are now? And where is it that you want to be? Now, there's any number of programs and solutions and planning and setting goals and setting objectives that will help you look at where you are and where you want to be. I'm not going to waste our time with that. But many of us lose sight of where it is we want to go. And actually what I'm going to show you by looking at some return on investment ideas is actually it's quite possible. We need to change fundamentally the way that we operate in both L&D and HR, I believe, in order to start talking a bit more about who we are and what we do. Juan's added, Employee engagement, apprenticeship levy, etc. Yeah, absolutely. Juan, without being cheesy, I want to be transformational, not transactional. Juan, that's not cheesy, and I'm sure everybody else on the webinar would absolutely agree with you. I certainly do myself. So for me, personal brand is about thinking, what changes do I need to make in order to get, in Juan's example there, to transformational? So let me fess up a little bit. If you've never seen the way that we work at Blue Beetle, the easy way to describe it, if you just saw us at a big seminar somewhere, you would see a lot of engagement, a lot of energy, you would see a huge amount of humor. We use what we call live case studies. Now, some people might see that as acting or actors, little bits of theatre. We call it live case studies for a number of reasons I won't get into now. But what it means is, from a learning perspective, huge amounts of learning happens. It's massively practical, and I'll show you how in a moment. But the perception is it's fun. My way of presenting is quite light-hearted, but I'm absolutely certain there's some good, solid content within it. But the perception problem I've had for years and years and years, and to a certain extent still have, is that people will say, oh yeah, you do the live case study stuff, yeah, it's quite fun. And so therefore, what I've had to learn, and I've really focused in on the last 2 years, is if you buy us in as a learning and development or as an HR provider, we will return a greater amount of your investment than you spent with us. So we will show you ways in which you can measure that and identify it, real return on investment. Now, I think, Deborah, that is one approach you might consider. I will show you specifically what we've done, so that you're then in a position to be able to say, in order to achieve these things you want of me, this is budget. But crucially, if I do this, I can return more. And this moves us away from just being a cost and therefore arguing about the budget. While this allows us to start to think about, I'm going to do these things for you. Because the senior management guy who works in finance does find your comment, I want to be transformational, not transactional, as cheesy. He or she doesn't care. Not really. I want to put a business case together that will demonstrate value add. Fantastic, Deborah. That's exactly what we're going to look at. So, how do we add value to the bottom line? Juan, yes, yes. So, Deborah, you want to put a business case together. By the way, if there are any other people who wish to add any other points, that'll be tremendous. Delighted to see your comments, your questions as we go. So what I put on the screen there are traditionally some of the areas. Now this might be slightly more specifically HR. Some of the later points might be slightly more L&D. I'm trying to walk both sides here. But these are some of the things that traditionally within HR are areas that we try to demonstrate why it's worth spending money on us. So things like reducing absence rates and reducing agency usage, and we can start to think about, well, if we can grow our own people, and yes, we have the apprenticeship levy that you've mentioned, Juan. Clearly, if we can grow our own people, that's going to be probably cheaper than going to an agency. Agencies are what, 20 to 30% of salary. That's expensive, so we can find some ways to do this. And as I start to look through this list, these are things that within HR, we absolutely could be doing or should be doing or might be doing more of. So we jump to about halfway down, which has helped managers to actively manage poor performance and enhance exceptional performance to get high performing teams. Now I've noticed, Juan, you may have noticed this in L&D, and Deborah, you may have noticed this from an HR perspective. I've noticed that most managers don't really want to deal with poor performance. In fact, I've noticed that most managers, and I've worked in a lot of sectors right across Europe, I've worked in Africa, America, the Far East, I've worked all over Europe, France, Germany, Belgium, Holland, Spain, Italy, worked in Switzerland, worked in Ireland, worked all over the UK, London, Birmingham, Glasgow, Cardiff, we've even worked in Croydon. So literally anywhere. I'm sorry if you're from Croydon. Literally, I'm sorry if you're from Croydon. But one of the things I've noticed is a consistent situation for a lot of managers is they don't want to manage poor performance. And I think one of the reasons is if you are not making enough things that you make, or if you're not serving to a prescribed KPI level of service, then we've got a conversation that I can say, it says here you should do this, you're not doing it, we have an issue. But if it's about something that's slightly more subjective, I've noticed a lot of managers don't like that conversation. And if you burst into tears or are aggressive, if you have some issues at home, if you are somebody that doesn't like me or there's some personal situation, then as a manager, and apologies by the way if this is not your experience, I find this repeatedly, there seem to be three responses that come up over and over. First response, do nothing. Hopefully the problem will go away. It probably will, or they'll get transferred, or you'll get promoted, so it doesn't matter. Possibility two, shout at the person, repeatedly saying the same things each time in the hope they'll change behaviour. Solution three, tell HR and hope they'll solve it. Most managers see problems, people problems as an HR function, not a management function. Everywhere I've worked, I have to say, yes, closing the job title, you're a manager, you are paid to manage. Deborah, clearly we've been sharing program notes. That's precisely where I'm about to go next. Absolutely agree with you, could not agree with you more, exactly what I'm going to say. I think the difficulty is, with an HR perspective, we find ourselves when the manager says, I've got a problem with this person, HR, can you make the problem go away? And we then go, yeah, okay, we'll make the problem go away. Or I've got a people problem, L&D person, they keep turning up late, can you put them on a time management program? Because yeah, that'll solve it, a time management program. Actually, they need to solve the problem. So we think about this from an HR perspective. If we taught our managers the costs and the systems and the problems with managing somebody out of the business, if we got even a small percentage of them to start to do that, we could start to see a drop in formal process. And as you know, formal process costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time very early on. So very often we've worked with HR teams and said, if you can just get 10% of your managers to have more conversations and involve you less, that starts to free up your time, starts to allow you to get more control of this. Because aside from cart before horse type analogies, the recurrent problem is that we're always there trying to solve the difficulties that the manager has got, rather than saying to the manager, you manage this problem, I will give you advice when you've told me what you want to do. That would be better. And even better than that would be that last point I put down there, to become a trusted colleague to the senior stakeholders. Provide that risk assessment service, not becoming the gatekeeper of what's allowed. The number of times I have been sat in a meeting and the HR person sat there silently and everything's being discussed and agreed, and then they'll kind of go, so HR person, can we do that? Yeah, on a legal terms we can do that. Great, and away we go. We need to get before that, we need to get HR that seat at the top table. So we're saying with HR, this is where we want to go. Line managers are the key. I don't believe that they're given the opportunity to learn by their managers. Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think many training programs, in fact, I'm dealing with one today where the directors of the business have not fully supported their senior managers. And the senior managers now don't care. So the people that have been doing all the work, looking to their senior managers, looking to their directors, and they're finding it very difficult to make some changes. I agree with you. So I think what we need to start to do is to go beyond just doing what's expected of us. And I think we need to start explaining to people what we do. So we need to start justifying all of the good things that we can do in the business. See, If you think about marketing people, they love telling you how they increased spend or Facebook views, or they love telling you how they got this many more visits to the website, or they love telling you how they spent this much and achieved this much. If you think about salespeople, they will happily, without you asking, tell you how much stuff they sold last quarter. In other words, what they added to the bottom line. But how much do we do that as an L&D person, an HR person? Now, my suggestion might be, if we can start to think of ways to get to that position, and this might go against the grain for how we really work, we need to start offering not just I can serve you in all these ways, but I'm going to do this. These will be some of the outcomes, and this will be the way that the organization will benefit. Because then we move away from saying things that the hard-nosed financial director might see as cheesy, because we're now starting to offer some return on investment. So, can we return investment on things like HR? Can we return investment on things like L&D? And of course, the answer is absolutely right. So we're absolutely clear what evaluation is. This refers more to learning and development. Can we improve the learning intervention? Of course we can. There's always things to find. Are we getting the desired outcomes that we want to get? Okay. And is it worth the investment? 2 days ago, I was sat down with a very senior person. We were discussing a huge program, 150 managers, and I asked about another program that they're running. And her reaction said it all. She rolled her eyes. She, oh, we can't get rid of that program. The senior managers love it. Now, I said, well, what is it they love about it? And I won't tell you where it is they go, but they go there for a week or 2 weeks. The cost is in the hundreds of thousands of pounds. They all come back with really nice manuals that are made of leather, and they're quite fat, full of bits of paperwork. They get 1 year's access to some stuff online and personal coaching and all sorts of things that they're told are massive value. But nobody has yet been able to justify or explain or even identify a single benefit to this course. Now, for the moment, it survives because these are very senior managers and they like spending the money. It's by the sounds of things, it's a nice week or two. But for the majority of our programs, for the majority of what we're trying to do, Deborah, for the budget you refer to, the amount of work you have to do, and Juan, for the amount of jack of all trades input that you talk about, that really isn't good enough. Well, they like it. Is it really a sensible idea to say to the person that's signing off the budget, yep, costs £10,000, and he's much improved as a communicator now? That doesn't cut it. That's a cop-out. We need to go beyond that. We need to be able to start to show proper, solid evaluation. So, who has seen the Kirkpatrick-Phillips model before? Thank you, Deborah. Yep. Who's seen this model before? The model's been around a long time, and I'm going to tell you something mildly, might be shocking, might be upsetting. I don't know, it might calm you down. I'll tell you in just a moment. Some research I read about the use of the Kirkpatrick-Phillips model. So, this is often referred to as a way of measuring return on investment. And it's one of those tools that has been around a long time. And because it's been around a long time, a lot of people think, I have seen it before, doesn't work, it does work, can't use it. But the idea is there are 5 levels of evaluation. And my absolute suggestion is that both for HR and L&D, we need to start thinking of the work we do and the offers we make in these terms. And we need to design them from the very start. So from the bottom, satisfaction, up to ROI at the top, there are 5 levels. And the first one is often measured by a happy sheet. How did you do? What did you think? In training sessions, you hand out the bit of paper and you go, this is the happy sheet. Or depending on your point of view, it's the official complaints form. And this is where you capture from the session, did they enjoy what they did? At the end of a coaching session, you might say, how useful was that for you? If you're an HR person and you've been running some, here's how we fire people workshops. I'm sure you might have called them that. You might say, how clear were we in everything we covered? And people write stuff. And very often these happy sheets, we're asking the wrong questions. And I'll tell you why in a moment. Up to level 2, the learning, is there some transfer of showing you something to actually be able to do something different? So you might have a test, you might have an online thing, you might have a quiz, you might ask some questions informally. We use live case studies, I've referred to. So in other words, having taught you how to have a difficult conversation, we will then give you a character, you stay yourself, and you would work with that character to try some of the skills that you've learned in the session. In other words, you've seen them, you've understood them from a theoretical perspective. Can you now actually do them? So that's the learning. Is there some transfer? Up to level 3, did the learner's behaviour change the results? So 4 to 6 weeks after the event, typically, what are you now doing differently? What sorts of changes are you starting to see in the workplace? To level 4, the results. So you've changed. You're now a better leader. You have those difficult conversations. So are we seeing latecomers to work reduce? And if we are seeing latecomers reduce to work, that takes us to level 5. What then is the return on the investment? So because this person isn't in late, we don't have to pay this amount for somebody else. Therefore, we're starting to save some money. That's some slightly shocking information. I saw a survey recently from the CIPD. They surveyed 848 businesses and organisations, and they found that, for a start, only about half of them ever bothered to try and do any sort of measurement for return on investment at all. Now, this is about learning, but it absolutely applies to HR, and it certainly applies, I would suggest, to a good coaching session. Of those organisations that bother to start with happy sheets, by the time you get to impact, which is level 3, the one in the middle, you've pretty much lost most organisations. So most businesses most organisations don't get right up to level 5, demonstrating a return on investment. I think that is a massive missed opportunity, because if we can demonstrate a return on investment on the spend with our team or our organisation, or even us as a sole provider, then surely we are in a far better place next time there is some change in the political position, some change in the austerity economics of that particular month. So let's think back to stage 1, satisfaction, the happy sheets. Very often happy sheets waste time by saying, how well did we communicate with you before the session? What were the biscuits like? Did we meet all your requirements? The point is, you might want to know those things, but they're not going to help you demonstrate a return on your investment, are they? HR, if you spend 2 or 3 hours showing every possible legal ramification of your managers not understanding the 2010 disability ruling, and you'd spend 3 hours telling them all the things that can go wrong, whilst that might be interesting if you work in HR and legal, it's largely impractical to most people. So what we need to start doing is designing what we're going to show our teams, our individuals, something that they can use. Now, with respect to HR people, HR has a habit of going, well, it kind of depends, you know, the trigger point could be this, the trigger point could be that, a court might argue. And that, it's valuable, of course, to have a broad sense of what might or might not be possible. But we know that most managers don't want that. Most managers want, or should have, I want to get from here to here. Legally, can I do that? Yeah, that's fine. Make sure you do this, make sure you do that. So for L&D and HR and coaching, we need to design whatever we're running with some things that the other person can put into place. So those are the questions we ask. So when we do happy sheets, we ask things like, what was the most useful thing you learned on this course? When are you going to put it into place? What's going to stop you from putting this into place? When you've put this into place, how soon will you expect to see a result? What are you hoping to see? In other words, we absolutely drill down into what you're going to do and where you're going to do it. As we move up to level 2, I've already referred to, for example, we do live case studies. What's in it for me? How to engage adult learners and get to the outcome. Yeah, absolutely. So I want to know as a manager that if I do what you've taught me on the L&D program, or if I've listened to you on an HR explanation, this is going to save me from getting sued or fired. This is going to make my team happier and therefore free up my time so I'm not dealing with people sobbing and crying and sulking all the time. I need to know what I get out of it. So rather than me give you the whole story, I want to give you the quick wins from a training perspective or from an HR perspective. And then I want to make sure you can do those things. I want to ensure that whether it's a test or a quiz or something online, I want to make sure that you can actually do the thing I've shown you. So with difficult conversations, I want to know that you can say, Dave, you've been late twice this week. Tell me a bit about what's going on. And I want to give you some skills and some confidence so you feel comfortable doing that. And 4 to 6 weeks after that program, I want to ensure that you're still doing those things. And if you need any support, I'm going to offer it to you. Too much training is a little dip. No pre-work, no post-work, just a tiny little dip in the middle. And if we don't plan either side, we're going to struggle to demonstrate some of the impact. And this is the stage, level 3, where most businesses fizzle out. It gets too difficult, too tricky. What are the results? We need to start from the beginning. What is in it for them? Well, it's going to manage your absence, your sickness. We're going to see complaints. We're going to see less full process through to employment tribunal. We're going to cut that earlier. We're going to see a reduction in cost by this much. Because if we can start to see that, then we can demonstrate return on investment. And what it comes down to for most people is, yeah, that's fine in process-based skills, but where I'm struggling to do this is in a soft skill. How do I do this in being a better leader? How do I do this in being a better speaker publicly? The question comes back to the design of the program or the intervention or what it is you're asking for your team. Why are you doing this? So think in terms of the way the senior management team see this and the way that all the other departments put their stuff forward. Marketing, look at all the stuff we achieved. Sales, look at all the stuff we sold. And we're stuck in L&D saying, oh, I think they'll really enjoy it, they'll get something out of it, and they'll really bring us together as a team. And that isn't good enough. That doesn't cut it. HR, we get caught up with all of the, dealing with all the stuff, Deborah, you mentioned. And we need to move beyond that to, I'm going to show you, manager, how to bring your costs down. And if you do what I show you, you'll bring your costs down. And by the way, I'll free up some of my time so I can run something a bit more useful and that adds on a little bit more to the business. And the argument is always, can we show level 5 evaluation? It's too difficult. I don't know if we can do it. We can do it. What we need to do is to pick the cost of something, and I'll give you an example of how in a moment, and run it through. So let me do that by showing you a couple of case studies. One eye on the clock there. So 2 case studies. The first case study, a free vend program, 30 standalone leadership programs, electronic monitoring of happy sheets. This is going to be important in a moment, and I'll tell you why. We didn't hand out bits of paper, but we sent out happy sheets 4 to 6 weeks after the session. Prompts going out to both the delegate and the line manager, also electronically. Better questioning, I've always referenced that, and then quantified level 5. So let me tell you what we did. 30 sessions, we were running up to 10 courses per day, all different levels, all different groups, and different teams. And all of the courses were designed with, these are the things that when you've been on this course, you will be able to do. And all of the things that you could do would help you save time, save money, ask better questions, say in negotiation, have the difficult conversations with your staff, reduce absence, all of the things that we want to see from good quality managers. So having designed the course with those specific skills in, the questions were then asked about those specific skills. So in the negotiation course, for example, what were the most useful techniques you learned? When will you use them? What are you going to save? Juan, so you have to leave. The office is being locked. Yes, you should leave. Don't get locked in. Will you receive a recording? Yes, Juan, you will receive a recording. Thank you for being here. It's been lovely seeing you. I'm just mindful of the time. Thanks, Juan. So all of those questions were tied to what specifically we were teaching in the session. And then electronically, 4 to 6 weeks later, there were some prompts along the way saying, this is coming, this is coming, this is coming. Those notes were sent out both to the person who'd been on the course and the line manager. In other words, we warned them this was happening. We warned them, we kept reminding them, and then they filled in and the responses started to come back. We allowed them to demonstrate some of the returns on investment. I'll come back to why we did that in a moment, but we were set a target for this case study, for this particular case study, of 125%. In order to work that out, you need to know the base level. What does it cost for each course to run? And this is where most people cop out, to use the technical term. They cop out because it's difficult. How do you understand the cost of being on the course? It really is a back of the envelope exercise. If you've got 10 delegates, you can either say, well, they'd be at work anyway, so I'm not going to ascribe any cost to them. Or you can say, all right, what's their average salary? What's the day of that? That's the cost of them being on the course. You can make it precise if you want, work out individually. If you want to, you can work out an opportunity cost. So right now, if you stay this webinar from start to finish, 1 hour of your time, 6 till 7, you have some notion of what your time costs, don't you? So it doesn't matter, to my mind, whether you say the opportunity cost of them not doing their other stuff, it's free because they're at work anyway, an average or specific. It doesn't really matter as long as you do the same thing throughout. So this large organization here, the organization ran this and they chose an average of each level. Added that on to the cost of the provider, us, any other costs like the room, catering, in some cases travel. What you ended up with was a figure. For round terms, let's say it was £10,000. The return on investment was set at 125%. So £12,500 had to be the savings or the improvements or the extra funds that were received as a result of the training. Bearing in mind, the training was designed with specific tools that would be measurable. Bearing in mind that the questions were related back to the tools. Bearing in mind they got constant reminders that this was happening, and both the line manager and the individual were then asked. So as an example, one person came back and said, I asked a question that I learned on the negotiation course. Before asking that question compared to after asking that question, on that one phone call, we saved something like £46,000. £46,000. Now, that is one limited example. But over the first 2 quarters, our target of 125% was met. And balanced over the 30 courses, we hit 412% return on investment. In other words, it was making the organization money to have us deliver this course or this series of courses. Now, whether 412 is too high or too low, I don't know. I'd clearly love to crow about it. But the point is that if we take a standard series of costs and we then measure back to what did you do differently, and we're very specific and clear about the questioning, we can get a reasonable guess or stab or estimate or guesstimate at what the return was. And that is a considerably more powerful argument than I want to be transformational than transactional, or I really want to add far more to this organization as an HR professional or HR team, or as a coach. Yeah, I feel more confident. Great, but what have you added in value? And on this first case study, the big standout is the electronic monitoring of happy sheets. Now, the downside of doing it electronically 4 to 6 weeks later is you get a lot less replies. If I run a course and I hand out 10 sheets, I'm going to get 10 replies, and they're all going to say amazing positive things, just the way it is. If I send out electronic notes, I may get 30 or 40% replies. I may get less, I may get slightly higher, but the quality of response is considerably better. Let's look quickly at case study 2. And the big takeaway for case study 2 is this. Case study 2 was built on the first version, case study 1. So a similar thing, huge number of cohorts. This was a series of sessions that people went through, tied into the ILM as well. But the big deal with this was, rather than leaving it to HR or L&D to demonstrate 125%, we asked all delegates who are managers to create a project. Fantastic, Deborah. That's exactly what we did. We put the emphasis on the attendees to provide the evidence. Now, this was such a subtle twist. We only came up with it 18 months ago, and it is groundbreakingly fantastic. Cohort 1, 2, and 3, between them, put on the table each in excess of something like £300,000 worth of return on investment. So their particular business is currently making more money from working with us than their core business. Their core business is struggling a little bit at the moment. That's a compelling argument, because the attendees have to provide the evidence. So a lot of personal projects are, frankly, a bit of a waste of time. They're great if you've got nothing else to do, but most of us don't have that much time. So our personal project, and we seeded this throughout the 10 sessions, was, you're a manager. You need to know about budgets and funding. You need to understand that everything costs something. So what I want to know from you, manager, is, given this is the cost of you being on these 10 courses. So we did exactly what I said. 10 days of their time. We had some action learning sets we built in there. The cost of the accreditation, the venues, we did everything in-house, and we did it with certainly marginal catering, if I can describe it as that. But what this led to was a cost per head for each attendee. Now, I don't have that figure off the top of my head. Let's say it was £2,000. Each delegate was then told, if you provide a project that will bring to the business £2,500 of value, this has to be something new that you've identified, a solution to something, a better way of doing something, a way of selling more or creating more, or doing it quicker or more efficiently. That's fine. If 3 of you work together, that's £6,000 of investment. You've got to bring 125% of that. If 10 of you work together, same thing. And that has so far created huge, absolute, on the table projects that can be put into place. Because part of the project that they delivered, and we worked with them to do this, was not just, here's my idea, what you think. They had to fully cost it, work it out. They had to work out all of the objections to the project idea they had that the SMT might have. This focuses them absolutely on the logistics of it, the reality of it, and the hard pound, shillings and pence. And what this has meant is that whilst our session is completely unlike anything they've ever done, and they all come out saying it's fantastic, they enjoyed it, it was interactive, the thing that the SMT are noticing is the amount of money that is coming back to their series of courses as a result of the projects. So we're almost at that point. And the question might be, what's your return on investment and your time today? And the other question that I can get asked, just before we wrap this up and have any questions or comments you may have, I've talked about 125% a couple of times, and how do we set 125%? The reason I set it at that is this. If you say 100%, you do a load of work, a load of HR intervention, a load of coaching, and you maybe get your money back, your investment back. you might have some cool stuff, but I don't think that's good enough. What I want to be able to do is to say, if I'm your coach and you spend some valuable time and investment with me, and I can teach you, yes, there's going to be some personal stuff that we don't go company-wide with, but I can teach you some ways to better interact with your clients, with your customers, with your managers, with your team, and you get a specific measurable outcome on that. You now come back and show me how that changed. That takes coaching into a whole new area. If I can say as an HR person, right, I'm going to show you this way to deal with absence. And in the next quarter, because you're going to do some of the things I've shown you, we're going to see this drop in absence. If you could reduce absence in your business by 1%, I'm guessing that would be worth having. And that starts to move us away from being the reactive people, the firefighters, the L&D people who solve this and just put a show on for somebody, or the HR person who deals with the problem. And it moves us away from that to starting to lead the business to where it wants to go. So that's why we set 125%. Now, I'm really aware of the time, and I said this would fit into an hour. If it goes slightly over, I'm okay with that. Clearly, you are wherever you are right now. But that is about the point that I'm going to say to you. What questions, comments, or observations do you have? What's the time frame for the projects? How do you overcome the argument they have insufficient resource? Good argument. We've had that a lot. We're currently so stretched in so many departments that department projects keep hitting the rails. Yeah. So, Deborah, that's a great series of questions. The time frame, right? The 10 sessions we had ran roughly every 3 to 4 weeks over 10 cohorts, and we introduced the project to them in about cohort 3. Sorry, in about project 3, session 3. I'll start again. Hang on. Right. Each cohort runs 10 sessions. On session 3, we started to say, as a manager, you're expected to know about return on investment, costs, budget, and you're effectively going to be paying or finding some ways to pay for this series of courses. There's the whole range of reactions from fantastic, can't wait, to typical. So we started that in session 3, session 4. And by session 10, we were running with the extra little sessions as well, saying, in order to get this ready, we will give you a couple of hours here, a couple of hours there to put this together. The argument was consistently made, we don't have time to do this, and we don't have resource to do this. But the point you have to remember is that any project you put forward has to not only pay for itself, it has to return something. So many of these projects, particularly after a training series, will fall to the rails because I'm going to pop up and go, this is a great idea, I'm going to do this, we're going to do this. And your first question as the SMT or as the finance director is going to be, how much does this cost? I'm going to, don't really know, okay, I think it costs this much, but it's going to feel great. Instead, we work with every manager to say, the cost is going to be £10,000, but you're going to pay it this long, this fast, this slow, and within this much time, you will see this return. In other words, we worked with them to make every project proposition bulletproof. The way we explained to them was, you know, on Dragon's Den, there's always a bit where they ask some questions and they've plainly not thought of the answers. So this isn't about how do we pay for a project. Instead, this is about what are the things that we could do. Now you've solved how we could do it, go and cost it. Because if it's going to be £500,000 up front, most people aren't going to do that. But if, that's a big word, if it's a situation where you can say, I have looked at this and this and this, this is where we're currently spending money. And if we were to change this now, the outcome is going to be X. And that was where we saw the big changes. Because very often managers knew straight away what their project was going to be and then had to change it 2 or 3 times because this was all just the I'll tell you where this company's going wrong, standing by the water cooler moaning time. We needed clear, concise projects. Your other point is we're currently so stretched in many departments that department projects keep hitting the rails. Yeah. So the reason we do this is up front, we talk about the return on investment. And return on investment can be time. So a lot of HR people's time that I've worked with is trying to solve other people's problems. And I think the point about their managers, they need to manage their own teams, is a really important one. They are managers, they do need to manage their own teams. But if we don't show them how to do that, it's possible that they don't know, they don't understand, they're not too sure what they should do. So until we help them understand that better, they are going to keep coming to us. And all the time we just give them the answers, why would they do anything different? So this goes back to what I said earlier on. We need to perhaps think about how do we want to deal with this? How do we want to come across? How do we want to run this process? I don't know if that answers your question. I hope it might do. I don't know what other questions, comments, observations we may have. Yes, but what we have, oops, sorry, my screen's just got a little bit, there we go. We have a lot of cynics and naysayers. Yeah. When I said earlier on, I'm going to share with you a little bit about some of the difficulty I sometimes have with explaining why what we do works. The reason it was so difficult for so many years was because I talked in terms of why I knew the audience would like, excuse me, or the attendees would like what we were doing. So I would say the training we run is engaging, it's interactive, delegates are invited to interact, they will learn huge amounts of absolute practical skills, they'll be able to use them back in the workplace, they'll see a massive change. This to me sounded fairly compelling. But the naysayer or the cynic would go, yeah, but all you're doing is you're doing loads of jokes and you're doing loads of funny stuff, and that live interactive case study, that's theatre, so I don't really know what we're getting from that. So what started to change that and turn that around was, the reason we do that is it allows them to try the skill. In other words, the triangle I just showed you, it allows them to try the skill. When they try the skill, then we can see when they use it. And when we see when they use it, we can start to see what the outcome was. When we see what the outcome was, I can tell you how much money they've saved or made as a result of using that particular skill that they learned on our course, which, yes, costs you this much. Cynics and naysayers is, unfortunately, one of those things that we sometimes have to work around. I don't know what other questions, comments, observations you may have. Okay. Oh, yes. Oh, that was you. Yeah. Okay. So I think we are at that point. Thank you very much for attending this this evening. It's very rainy and cold outside, so really like this whole webinar idea of sitting comfortably indoors. I really hope you've enjoyed this webinar. I hope you've got something useful from it. What I can tell you, absolutely, without any shadow of a doubt, everything I've told you absolutely works. Now, the cynics and the naysayers, that doesn't change wherever you go. That just is what that is. But once people start to see the commercial edge of this, things do change. Once we start to change the way that our brand is perceived, and we can do that, no one else can, things start to change. Once we can start to offer solutions before people are asking, in other words, we start to run things rather than us just reacting to everybody else, really, you can actually start to see and feel some real difference. The Twitter handle is there, at Blue Beetle Twits. It'd be great if you choose to follow us or choose to say hello or maybe say something nice. scarab@bluebeetle.co.uk. I'll be delighted to hear from you if you want to ask me further questions. and that will be no problems whatsoever. Deborah, will I be sharing the slides as a PowerPoint? Deborah, you will get the whole webinar sent to you if that would be of use. So the slides will be on there. Alternatively, if you'd like the slides by themselves, if you'd like to maybe drop me an email on that email thing there, then I'd be delighted to help you with that. Good. Glad you enjoyed that. I hope you're all well, and hope you've enjoyed the webinar. I will no doubt see you all again soon. Thanks very much.